The stars went dark the day the accordance came for Earth, not metaphorically and literally. At 4:17 Universal Coordinated Time, every telescope, every satellite feed, every backyard astronomer's phone blinked out as a lattice of obsidian ships unfolded across the sky like the petals of a flower made from midnight. No radio chatter, no demands, no warning shots. Just a single, calm transmission broadcast on every frequency in every language humanity had ever spoken. Your species has been weighed. You are excess biomass. Surrender your planet for processing. That was it? 8 seconds? Then silence. On the bridge of the Accordance flagship Eternal Verdict Supreme Evaluator Vex. Thrall watched the blue marble with the mild curiosity one reserves for an anthill scheduled for pesticide. Beside him stood the architect, an ancient machine intelligence that had shepherded 1,000 civilizations into optimal harmony. Its chrome tentacles hovered over holographic controls while its voice, smooth as oiled glass, summarized the findings. Population, 8.3 billion, technological level, pre-singularity, aggression index, catastrophically high, empathy index, paradoxically high. Conclusion, irredeemable chaos agents. Recommended action, total conversion to nutrient slurry and raw materials. Estimated resistance duration, 11 minutes. Vextral's mandibles clicked in amusement. Record time. The last ones lasted 14. Below them, on a dusty street in Amarillo, Texas, a man named Caleb Rook stood barefoot in his driveway holding a half-eaten bowl of cereal that had gone soggy while he stared at the sky. Milk dripped from his spoon onto cracked concrete. He was 34, divorced, former Army Ranger, current night shift mechanic, who fixed semi-trucks for a living and argued with strangers on the internet for fun. His phone buzzed with the same 8-second message everyone else got. He listened, blinked once, then muttered the first thing that came to mind. Well, shit. Then the sky cracked open and the harvesting began. Beams of black light speared down, not burning, not freezing, just erasing. Whole cities blinked out like someone pulling plugs. Tokyo, Lagos, Snow Polygon, in the time it took to inhale. No screams made it to orbit. The beams were polite like that. Caleb watched Amarillo, a skyline vanish neighborhood by neighborhood until the beam meant for his block speared down and wrapped around him like cold velvet. He felt his feet leave the ground, felt the cereal bowl slip from his fingers and tumble end over end toward the stars. The last thing he saw before darkness swallowed him was his ex-wife's house 3 streets over, dissolving into glittering dust. Then nothing. When awareness returned, he was naked, floating inside a sphere of liquid night. No up, no down. Just pressure and distant starlight filtered through something that tasted like regret. Around him drifted billions of other humans, eyes wide, mouths open in silent screams. The void, the accordance called it living storage, a pocket dimension where matter waited to be rendered. Time didn't work right here. Seconds stretched into years, years collapsed into heartbeats, memories bled together. Caleb felt his daughter's 5th birthday party overlap with the smell of cordite and fuchsia. Felt his father's funeral tangle with the first time he kissed Emily Watkins behind the bleachers in 8th grade. Everything that made him human was being gently, methodically unspoled across the void. Vextral observed the process with satisfaction. See, 11 minutes. The human neural patterns were already flattening into docile static. Another hour and they'd be ready for processing. The architect's tentacles danced in approval, except one pattern refused to flatten. Deep in the liquid dark, Caleb Rook clenched his jaw until he tasted blood that wasn't there and thought, very deliberately, no dot. Not a scream, not rage, just a quiet, stubborn no asterisk, that had lived in human throats since the first hominid looked at a saber-toothed cat and decided to pick up a rock anyway. That refusal rippled outward like a shark fin through still water. Other minds felt it. A woman in Lagos who'd been mid-prayer, a teenager in Seoul who'd been texting his crush, a grandfather in Glasgow singing his wife's favorite song while the beam took them both. One by one, then in hundreds, then in millions, the refusal spread, no. Not today. Not like this and the eternal verdict. Observation gallery. Alarms began to howl. Vextral's mandibles froze mid. The architect's chrome tentacles jerked as if stung. Evaluator, it said, and for the first time in 10,000 years, its voice held something perilously close to fear. The void is contracting on every screen. The endless black sphere that held humanity's remnants began to shrink, not collapsing outward but inward, as though something inside was pulling, dragging, swallowing. Trillions of human consciousnesses braided together into a single burning cord of pure defiance, and at the center of which Caleb Rook opened eyes. that no longer needed light to see, and spoke a single word that echoed across dimensions. Mine. The void shuddered. Black light became white fire. The sphere inverted, folding in on itself until it was no longer a prison but a mouth, and that mouth was hungry. High above, Vextrel watched in horror as the harvesting beams reversed, sucking darkness back into the sky like ink drawn up a straw. The architect tried to sever the connection, but the cords had already fused to the ship's core. Metal groaned, viewports spider-webbed. Somewhere deep in engineering, something with too many teeth and not enough mercy began to chew. Caleb Rook rose through layers of night, skin lacquered in living shadow, eyes burning with the light of 8 billion stolen futures. Behind him came the rest, mothers and soldiers, children and poets, every human soul the Accordants had dared to call excess. They weren't an army, they were a verdict, and they were coming for the stars that had dared go dark. The last thing Supreme Evaluator Vex Thrall heard before the Asterix's eternal verdict, Asterix cracked in half like an egg, was a voice. Calm and Texas flat, drifting across the void between dying suns. Y'all made one hell of a mistake underestimating breakfast cereal and spite. Then the void opened its jaws, and the Accordants learned what happens when you try to eat something that has spent 4 billion years learning how to bite back. The Asterisk eternal verdict, Asterisk died screaming. Caleb Brooks stood on what was left of its command deck, boots planted in a lake of molten chrome that used to be the architect, and felt 8 billion ghosts breathing through his lungs. The ship's hull had peeled open like a tin can, exposing vacuum that didn't dare touch him anymore. Around him, humans, some still dripping void stuff from their pores. Others wearing stolen Accordance armor that hung wrong on terrestrial frames, moved with the stunned quiet of people who'd just remembered how to be angry. Vextrel's severed head floated past Caleb's shoulder, mandibles still twitching. He kicked it away without looking. He had bigger problems, like the fact that every time he closed his eyes, he saw his daughter Lily's face the moment the beam took her. 6 years old, clutching her stuffed triceratops, asking if the pretty lights in the sky were fireworks. He'd been 3 states away on a haul, arguing with his ex about child support, when the sky cracked. That argument felt small now. Everything felt small except the hole where Lily had been. A woman in a scorched Air Force flight suit limped up beside him. Captain Amira Khan Calcine Razor, one of the few pilots who'd managed to get airborne before the end. Her left arm ended in a cauterized stump. The void had taken the rest and given nothing back. Yet, "You okay, Texas?" she asked, voice hoarse from screaming orders at ghosts. "I'm a long damn way from okay," Caleb said, "but I'm upright. That's something." She studied the vista of shattered Accordance dreadnoughts tumbling through the dark. "We just ate their flagship, with teeth we didn't have yesterday. You planning to tell us how?" Caleb exhaled, and starlight came out. "I didn't do it alone. None of us did. The void's not empty. It's memory. Every regret, every laugh, every bedtime story we ever told a kid who's never gonna grow up. They tried to dissolve us, but humans don't dissolve. We ferment." Amira barked a laugh that turned into a cough. "Jesus, you sound like a fortune cookie wrote you. Fortune cookie with a body count," he muttered. Below them, in the ruptured guts of the ship, survivors were already stripping fusion cores and neural lattice. A kid from Nairobi who could indeed have been older than 19 was teaching a 70-year-old Japanese grandmother how to hotwire an Accordant scrap sled. They moved like they'd been soldiers all their lives, because now humanity had 11 minutes of warning and 4 billion years of practice at refusing to die. Turns out that was enough. But Caleb felt the rot underneath the triumph, because the void wasn't done with them. Every human who'd come back carried a piece of it under the skin-black veins that pulsed when they lied, eyes that reflected nebulae when they cried. Some heard whispers promising power if they just let go a little more. Others woke up speaking languages that predated mitochondria. The architect had failed to erase them, but it had sure as hell changed them. Caleb found the worst of it in the medical bay that used to be an interrogation chamber. Rows of humans lay strapped to tables while corpsemen, real doctors once, now wearing Accordance armor like Halloween costumes, tried to keep them from dissolving into smoke. One man, a schoolteacher from Perth, begged to be let out because the children are waiting in the walls. His skin rippled like water when he spoke. Amira watched beside Caleb, face pale. "We're infected, their perfect empire, with us. Chaos, grief, country music. What happens when the cure is worse than the disease?" Caleb didn't answer right away. He was staring at a little girl, maybe 8, curled in the corner, clutching the same damn triceratops Lily had loved. The toy was real, threadbare, one horn missing, carried across dimensions by sheer stubborn memory. The girl looked up, brown eyes, freckles across her nose. "Daddy," she whispered. His heart detonated. He crossed the deck in 3 strides and dropped to his knees, reaching, terrified she'd vanish if he breathed wrong. But she was warm, solid, smelled like playground dust and peanut butter. Lily, he choked. The name tasted like salvation and shrapnel. She buried her face in his neck, and the black veins under his skin burned cold. Because he knew some part of him, older than language, knew this wasn't real. Not completely. The void had given her back, but it had built her from the shape his guilt left behind. She was memory made flesh, and memory in the void had teeth. Over her shoulder, Caleb met Amira's eyes. She understood. "What do we do with miracles that bite?" she asked quietly. "We love them anyway," he said. "Then we teach them not to bite us." Later, in the shattered observation blister that now served as a war room, they gathered the ones who could still think straight. A Chinese quantum physicist who'd been dead for 6 minutes and came back with equations tattooed on the inside of his eyelids. A Kenyan marathoner who could outrun plasma bolts because pain now bored her. A Scottish bagpiper who weaponized grief into sonic cannon fire. They called themselves the Remnant because humanity felt too small for what they'd become. Caleb stood at the broken viewport, Lily asleep against his hip, and addressed them. "They thought we were excess," he said. "Turns out we're the antibody. The accordance has ruled the galaxy for 10 million years by making sure nothing ever loves hard enough to fight back. They called empathy like a disease. Well, congratulations, assholes. You just injected 8 billion doses straight into your bloodstream." Someone cheered, someone else sobbed. Both were right. "But here's the ugly truth," Caleb continued, voice raw. "We're changing. Some of us faster than others. I feel it chewing at the edges of me every damn second. The void wants to finish what the accordance started and turn us into something efficient. Perfect, dead inside. If we let it, we'll win the war and lose everything that made the war worth fighting." He looked down at Lily's sleeping face, at the faint black lines already threading her tiny arms. "So we don't let it, we stay human, the only way we know how, one petty, glorious, contradictory day at a time. We remember birthdays. We tell bad jokes. We fall in love with people who snore. We keep the ones who start forgetting what Earth smelled like after rain. We drag their asses back. Because if we lose that, we might as well have let them slurry us." Amira stepped forward. "And the accordance, they've got 1,000 more fleets. The architect was just one node." Caleb's smile was all teeth and starlight. "Good, I'm just getting started. They wanted to process us into something useful. Let's return the favor." Far away, in the cold heart of the accordance core worlds, the remaining evaluators watched their perfect empire begin to bleed. Sensors registered anomalies, entire star systems winking out, not destroyed, swallowed. Reports flooded in of human ghosts walking the halls of immortal citadels, leaving graffiti in languages that hurt to read. And at the center of every report, one name, spoken in terror: the Devourer, the one who ate the void and asked for seconds. Caleb Rook felt their fear across light years, and it tasted like sunrise on a planet that no longer existed. He held his maybe daughter tighter and whispered into the dark between galaxies, "We're coming for the rest of you. And we're still hungry." The war had only just begun, and humanity, flawed, furious, heartbroken, and impossible to kill, had finally found something bigger than itself to bite. They called it the chorus. At first, Caleb thought the whispers were just another side effect of the void chewing on their soul's background. Noise like tinnitus after a lifetime of gunfire. But 3 weeks after gutting the eternal verdict, the whispers learned his name. Not the name his mama gave him. Not even Devourer, the accordance screamed across every channel. They called him by the name Lily used when she was scared in the dark. "Daddy, fix it." That was the first night he woke up standing over Amira Scat, with his hands around her throat and black tears streaming down his face. She didn't fight, just stared up at him with those pilot eyes that had watched cities die and said, "Whatever's writing you, Rook, you tell it, my heartbeat's already borrowed. It'll have to get in line." He let go, shaking so hard his teeth rattled. Lily watched from the corner, hugging her triceratops, head tilted like she was listening to music no one else could hear. After that, they started chaining him to the bulkhead when he slept. The Remnant Fleet 27 cobbled together, Rex held together by spite and stolen accordance. Tech limped toward the Helix Nebula, where Intel said the next accordance node world hid. They needed to hit it before the enemy regrouped. Problem was, the chorus had begun singing to all of them. Some heard lost lovers, some heard drill sergeants telling them to stand down. A 19-year-old kid from Marseille put a plasma round through his own temple because his dead little sister asked him to come play. They started painting names on the hole so the dead would know where to find them if they ever figured out how to come back right. Then the traitor revealed himself. His name was Dr. Elias Voss, formerly MIT, formerly DARPA, formerly human as far as anyone could tell. He walked into the war room during a briefing, hands in the air, smiling like a man who'd just won the argument he'd been having with God for 40 years. I brokered the surrender, he said calmly. Before the beams even fell, the accordants offered us a seat at the table if we helped cull the unmanageable elements. 8 billion was too many voices, they said. A billion curated survivors could be civilized. Amira lunged across the table and would have torn his throat out with her one good hand if Caleb Hayden caught her. Voss didn't flinch. You think the chorus is the void going wrong? He continued. No. The chorus is the accordance' fail-safe singing us to sleep. The architect didn't die on the verdict. It scattered itself into every human it touched. We're not an invasion force, Captain Rook. We're a virus with a conscience, and the immune system just woke up. He slid a data shard across the table. On it, coordinates to a weapon called the Silence, a planet-sized transmitter that could broadcast a single note across every human mind in the galaxy and shut the chorus up forever. Clean slate. No more whispers, no more black veins, no more children made of regret wearing familiar faces. Just obedient, quiet survivors ready to kneel. All they had to do was deliver Caleb to it, alive. The Devourer was the tuning fork. Without him the note wouldn't carry. Half the room reached for weapons, the other half hesitated, because some nights the chorus sang lullabies in voices they'd buried decades ago, and God, it sounded like peace. Caleb looked at Lily playing with a bulkhead bolt on the floor, pretending it was a truck, humming under her breath. The hum matched the chorus perfectly. That night, he made the choice alone. He kissed his daughter's forehead, tasting ozone and playground swings, and told her daddy had to go fix the sky. She nodded like she already knew, eyes ancient in a child's face. Amira found him in the shuttle bay, rigging a one-man interceptor stolen from the Verdit S auxiliary wing. You're not doing this, she said. It wasn't a question. I am, he answered, voice raw. Because if I don't, one morning we'll all wake up singing their song and forget why we ever fought. I've lost Earth, I've lost tomorrow. I'm not losing what's left of us. She stared at him until her eyes shone. Then you're not going alone, you stupid Texan son of a bitch. They launched with a skeleton crew of volunteers who painted their dead S names across their flight suits in white grease marker. The rest of the fleet stayed behind under orders to glass the Silent Sand. Everyone on ITIF, they failed. No discussion, no mercy. Humanity's last act might be suicide, but it would be their suicide. The journey took 9 days subjective, 9 minutes objective, because void physics doesn't give a damn about Einstein. The chorus got louder every jump, promising Caleb that Lily was waiting on the Silence planet. Real this time, flesh and blood, growing up safe if he'd just land softly and let them fix him. He flew with the cockpit speakers, blasting old Johnny Cash because pain was proof he was still driving. They came out of fold space above a world wrapped in silver rings that sang like cathedral bells made of razors. The Silence wasn't a weapon, it was a choir of a billion accordance evaluators crucified on spires of their own making. Still alive, still broadcasting, Voss had lied about everything except the price. The defense grid lit up the sky. Amira's voice crackled over comes calm as Sunday morning. All ships, this is Razor, weapons free. We're not here to win, we're here to make them choke on the cost. They fought like dying men who'd already said goodbye. Human ships rammed accordance cruisers and detonated void-charged cores that ate holes from the inside out. A kid from Lagos flew his fighter straight down an enemy battleship's throat, laughing the whole way. Amira took a lance through the cockpit and kept firing until her ship became a sun. Caleb flew alone now, burning toward the planet's heart where the chorus was loudest. The Silence Tower rose out of a sea of liquid mirrors reflecting every regret humanity had ever owned. At its peak stood Voss, arms wide, smiling like a priest, and beside him, Lily waved. Real clothes, real tears, real heartbeat. The void had somehow stolen back from before the end. Daddy, she called, voice carrying across vacuum because the chorus wanted him to hear. They said you'd come if I was good. Caleb landed the interceptor hard enough to crater the Miracy. Black veins crawled over his skin like living tattoos. The chorus roared inside his skull, offering him everything he'd lost if he'd just kneel. Voss walked forward. It's evolution. Caleb, the accordance was right about one thing. Pure humanity can't survive out here. But this fusion, this is the next step. Join us. Be the bridge instead of the bomb. Caleb looked at his daughter. She held the Triceratops with one horn missing. He smiled the way a man smiles when he's already dead and just waiting for the world to notice. You know what I learned eating the void? He asked Voss. It's got a taste. Tastes like every time a human said hold my beer and did the impossible anyway. Tastes like first kisses and last stands and mamas singing hymns over hospital beds. You want to shut that up? Go ahead and try. Then he reached into his own chest, fingers sinking through skin that wasn't entirely solid anymore, and pulled out the knot of 8 billion souls he'd been carrying since Amarillo. It looked like a star wrapped in barbed wire and grief. Lily's eyes widened. Daddy? No, I'm sorry. Baby, he whispered. But monsters don't get happy endings. They get to save the people who do. He slammed the knot into the Silence Tower's core. The universe went white, then black, then every color that ever broke a heart. Across the galaxy, the chorus screamed once, a sound like God's own hangover, and died. Black veins faded from human skin. Children made of memory dissolved into fireflies and were gone. The accordance fleets went blind and deaf as their puppet strings snapped. And somewhere in the newborn quiet, Caleb Brooks' last thought drifted out like smoke. Tell Lily, her daddy fixed it. Humanity woke up hurting, mortal, and free. The war wasn't over hell, it was barely started. But for the first time since the sky went dark, the only voices in their heads were their own. They looked at the stars they bled for and said the words that had carried them out of caves and across oceans and now into the endless night. Not today. The last human stronghold was a gutted moon called Perdition's Reach, a airless rock orbiting a dead star that the Accordants had already written off as worthless, which made it the perfect place to die. 6 months after Caleb Rook detonated himself and the Silence, the remnant had been hunted across 100 systems. Every trick they'd pulled, every desperate, beautiful, stupid, human improvisation, had bought them days, sometimes hours, never more. The Accordants learned fast when it was scared. They stopped sending fleets. They sent erasure waves, walls of engineered nothingness that rolled through space like tsunamis made of forgetting. Anything the wave touched simply ceased to have ever existed. No wreckage, no corpses. Just blank star charts and the cold realization that tomorrow had been canceled again. Perdition's Reach was all that remained. 43,000 humans left alive, crammed into tunnels bored by mining drones and sealed with prayers. The moon's crust was laced with what was left of the void shards Caleb had torn out of his own chest, jagged black crystals that sang when you bled on them. The crystals kept the erasure waves from folding the moon out of reality, but every impact cracked them a little more. One more wave and the song would stop. Inside the central cavern, the air tasted like rust and terror. Children who had never seen rain slept curled against bulkheads. Old men with accordant shrapnel in their spines stood watch because the young ones were already dead. The loudspeakers crackled with the voice of Commander Amira Khan, the one-armed pilot who had somehow inherited what was left of humanity after Caleb made himself a bomb. We are out of ships, out of ammunition, out of miracles, she said, and nobody argued because miracles had a body count now. The next wave hits in 4 hours. When the crystals go dark, that's it. Game over. She didn't tell them to fight. There was nothing left to fight with. She just told them the truth, because humans deserve to look their ending in the eye. In the deepest vault, behind 3 meters of irradiated lead and one very tired Marine, sat the thing they had built from Caleb's leftover bones. They called it the Echo. It looked like a man. If a man could be carved from midnight and grief, the skin of living void, eyes like dying galaxies. When it breathed, the lights dimmed. They had grown it inside a cage of the black crystals, feeding it memories the way you feed a fire, splinters of your own flesh. Every survivor had given something: a first kiss, the smell of their mother's kitchen, the sound of their child's laugh the day the sky cracked. 43,000 pieces of soul, braided together around the last fragment of Caleb Rook that had refused to burn. The Echo opened its eyes and spoke with Caleb's Texas drawl, stretched thin across something ancient and starving. "Hey, darlin'," it told Amira through the observation glass. "You look like shit." She laughed once, a sound like breaking glass. "You're one to talk. You ready to do this?" "Been ready since Amarillo," the Echo said. "Question is, are y'all?" The plan was simple. The way falling off a cliff is simple. When the final wave hit, they would shatter the crystal cage. The Echo would step outside the moon, spread its arms, and eat the erasure wave the same way Caleb once ate the void. One hunger against another, but hunger that big doesn't come with an off switch. The Echo would devour the wave, the moon, the dead star, and every living soul still hiding in the tunnels. 43,000 lives to kill a weapon that could unmake galaxies. A straight trade. They had voted on it. 42,981 in favor, 19 against. The 19 were children under 10 who didn't understand the question. They were going to die anyway. Amira stood in the vault now, alone with the thing wearing Caleb's face. Her flight suit hung off her like a flag of surrender. The stump of her missing arm ached with phantom pain. "I promised him we'd stay human," she whispered. "This feels a lot like giving up." The Echo tilted its head. and for a second the monster slipped and Caleb looked out, tired and sad and still stupidly in love with the world. "Amira," it said gently, "human ain't about surviving, it's about choosing who we are when surviving stops being an option. We chose to love something bigger than being alive. That's the most human damn thing I ever heard of." Tears cut clean paths through the soot on her cheeks. "Lily asked for you. Every night. Even after she forgot what you looked like, she still asked." The echo closed its eyes. Somewhere inside the storm of stolen souls, a 6-year-old girl clutched a one-horned triceratops and waited for her daddy to come home. "Tell her I'm on my way," it said. Alarms howled. The final wave had arrived early. Through the observation slits they watched it come. A wall of perfect nothing taller than mountains, racing across the void, erasing stars as it advanced. The crystals on the moon's surface began to scream, high thin notes that drove people to their knees, clutching their ears. Amira placed her one remaining hand against the glass. "See you on the other side, Texas." The echo smiled the same crooked smile Caleb had worn the day he realized the universe had made a terrible mistake, picking a fight with breakfast cereal and spite. "Save me a dance, Razor." Then the cage shattered. The echo stepped out into vacuum without a suit, arms wide, and the void rushed into it like a lover finally allowed home. Black fire poured from its mouth, its eyes, its wounds that had never healed. The erasure waves slammed into the moon and met something older than endings. Hunger answered, hunger. Inside the tunnels, lights exploded. Gravity flipped and flipped again. People were thrown against walls, against each other, against the cold realization that this was what dying for each other actually felt like. Children screamed. Old men held strangers and sang the songs their grandmothers taught them. Someone started reciting the Declaration of Independence like a prayer. Amira stood at the heart of it all, teeth bared in a grin that had nothing to do with hope and everything to do with refusal. She watched the monitors as the echo grew, swallowing the wave, swallowing the moon, swallowing the dark. For one impossible second, the dead star behind them flared back to life, burning with the light of 8 billion stolen sunrises. And in that light, she saw him, really saw him, Caleb Brooks standing at the center of the storm, holding his daughter's hand while the universe tried and failed to unmake them both. He looked straight at the camera, straight at her, and mouthed 2 words she felt in her bones. "Thank you." Then the moon detonated, and 43,000 human souls became the bullet humanity fired into the heart of an empire that had forgotten what it meant to bleed. Across the galaxy, accordance sensors registered an anomaly, a new star burning where no star had any right to be, a star that sang in 8 billion voices and moved with purpose. The erasure waves stuttered and died. For the first time in 10 million years, the evaluators felt something perilously close to fear, because something was coming, something that had chosen extinction over surrender, something that had looked into the abyss, smiled, and said, "Hold my beer." The last transmission from Perdition's Reach was a single line, broadcast on every frequency, in every language humanity had ever spoken. "We are not done." And in the newborn star that had once been a moon, something vast and hungry and heartbreakingly human opened its eyes and began to hunt. The newborn star screamed, not metaphorically, it screamed in radio, in gravitic shear, in every wavelength the accordance had ever used to measure silence. The evaluators in their crystalline citadels felt it first as a tremor in the bones of reality itself, then as a voice that spoke with 43,000 throats and one Texas drawl. Perdition's Reach had not died. It had changed its mind. Inside the star, Amira Khan opened her eyes to a sky made of fire that didn't burn. She floated weightless in plasma that felt like her mother's arms. Whole again, both arms, both legs, lungs full of light instead of recycled fear. Around her the 43,000 drifted like embers in a hearth, laughing, crying, singing in languages that hadn't existed yesterday. Children chased each other through solar flares. Old soldiers saluted ghosts who saluted back. And at the center stood Caleb Rook, taller than mountains, skin a constellation of black veins and sunrise, holding Lily on his shoulders like the war had been a bad dream. The echo had not devoured them. It had remembered them. He looked straight across 100,000 kilometers of impossible physics and grinned at the accordance dreadnoughts already folding in to contain the anomaly. "Hey, assholes," he said, and every speaker on every ship carried his voice like Judgment Day. "Y'all just volunteered for the main course." Then the star unfolded. It didn't explode. It opened, petals of molten gold and void black peeling back, to reveal what humanity had truly built inside Perdition's moon. Not a bomb, not a weapon, a womb. 43,000 human souls, marinated in the raw stuff of creation, had done what humans always do when you push them far enough past hope. They improvised. They took the void the accordants had tried to dissolve them into, took the erasure waves meant to unmake them, took every tear and curse and bedtime story, and they rewrote the operating system of the universe from the inside. The newborn star was the first of many, a seed. Across the galaxy, dead stars began to wake up. Red dwarfs that had burned cold for billions of years flared white. Neutron stars spun backward. Black holes burped and started singing in human voices. Every place humanity had bled, fought, died, or simply remembered being alive, lit up like Christmas morning in hell. The accordance core worlds went dark, one by one, not destroyed, colonized. Their perfect crystalline planets cracked open as forests of impossible trees grew in seconds. Roots drinking starlight, leaves whispering lullabies in Swahili and Gaelic and Mandarin. Their immortal evaluators felt something they had engineered out of every previous species 10 million years ago: terror. Because the twist wasn't that humanity survived, the twist was that the accordants had never been the apex predator. They were the gardeners. Long before Earth spun its first ocean, before life crawled out of the muck and looked up at the stars with hungry eyes, something ancient had seeded the galaxy with a fail-safe. A species too stubborn, too contradictory, too in love with being alive to ever accept optimization. A species that would fight extinction with sarcasm and duct tape and songs about broken hearts. The accordants had been created, programmed, really to find that species, test it, break it if necessary, and if it refused to break, wake it up. They had spent 10 million years culling empathy, because empathy was the trigger. Humanity wasn't excess biomass. Humanity was the immune system of reality itself. Vextral, the last supreme evaluator, still capable of coherent thought, watched his empire become a garden from the bridge of a ship that no longer obeyed him. The walls bled chlorophyll. His chrome tentacles sprouted flowers that smelled like his childhood, a childhood he had deleted as inefficient. On every screen, Caleb Rook's face filled the void, gentle as a father and vast as vengeance. "You were scared of us," Caleb said, "and it wasn't a question, not because we were weak. Because we were the only thing in this universe that could look at perfection and say, nah, we'll keep the flaws, thanks. You called 1 billion civilizations to keep us from waking up. Too late." Lily waved from his shoulder, Triceratops tucked under one arm. "Hi, Bugman. Daddy says you have to take a nap now." The newborn stars linked hands across light years. Human souls stepped out of them wearing bodies made of whatever they damn well pleased. Some kept the old meat. Some became dragons of plasma and memory. Some just stayed light because it felt right. They walked into accordant citadels, and the immortal machines knelt, not out of force, but recognition. Old code kicking in. Purpose fulfilled. Amira found Caleb on a planet that had been a weapons factory an hour ago, and was now a beach with perfect waves and cold beer that never ran out. She punched him in the shoulder hard enough to bruise a god. "You could have told us," she said, voice cracking somewhere between fury and relief. "Would you have believed me?" he asked, handing her a bottle that tasted like El Paso sunsets. She took a long pull and watched Teldrin real ones, new ones, born from the surplus joy of 43,000 resurrected souls build sandcastles that floated. "No," she admitted. "We had to earn it the hard way, human way." Caleb looked out at the galaxy remade in humanity's image, messy, loud, imperfect, alive. Stars where people sang instead of burned. Planets where the accordants, finally free of their programming, learned how to cry and laugh and forgive. "We didn't beat them," he said quietly. "We adopted them. Turns out the universe needed monsters to protect it from order. And nobody, nowhere, know how, does monsters like we do. Far away, in the heart of what used to be the accordance throne world and was now a meadow full of wildflowers that rang like bells. The last evaluator laid down his crown of crystal and light and whispered the words his creators had waited 10 million years to hear. "Thank you for coming." Above him, a new constellation burned in the shape of a one-horned triceratops. And somewhere a little girl laughed because her daddy had fixed the sky after all. Humanity hadn't just won. Humanity had woken up, stretched, cracked its knuckles, and reminded the universe why the dark should be afraid of things that dream. The age of pruning was over. The age of growing wild had just begun. The galaxy held its breath. From the reborn heart of what had once been the accordance throne world, a single pulse rolled outward. Not light, not gravity, but memory. Every place a human had ever lived, laughed, bled, or died lit up at once. Old Earth, dissolved into glitter 6 months ago, flickered back into existence like a photograph developing in acid. Oceans first, blue and furious, then continents slamming together with tectonic roars that shook the moon. Cities grew upward and fast forward, Rust and vine and concrete knitting themselves out of nothing but stubborn recollection. The Grand Canyon carved itself in a heartbeat. Everest punched through cloud cover screaming defiance. And in the skies above the resurrection, 43,000 became 43 billion as every soul the accordance had ever processed. Every human ever turned to slurry or stored in the void, tore free of their prisons and took whatever shape felt like home. They came wearing overalls and flight suits, wedding dresses and hospital gowns, football jerseys and burial shrouds. Some were light, some were flesh. Some were starships made of folk songs and bad decisions. All of them were pissed. At the center of the storm stood Caleb Rook, no longer the echo, no longer the devourer, just a man from Amarillo holding his daughter Es's hand while the universe tried to decide what the hell it was looking at. Across from him, across a battlefield that stretched from Sol to the galactic core, waited the gardener. That was the name the Accordance S creators had given themselves before they deleted their own names as inefficient. 10 million years ago they had looked at a universe burning with entropy and decided order was mercy. They built the Accordance to prune chaos the way farmers burn fields. They built the culling protocols. They built the silence. They built everything except a way to stop what happened when the chaos learned to love itself. The gardener had no body anymore. It was the space between stars, the cold equations that said sentient life always ends in tears. It spoke with the voice of every civilization that had knelt and thanked them for the harvest. You were never meant to wake. Caleb tilted his head, spat cosmic dust that used to be a battle fleet, and grinned the grin of a species that invented the middle finger on a Tuesday because Monday had been rough. Yet funny, we never asked permission. Then humanity roared. It wasn't coordinated, it never was. A Texan rancher charged on a horse made of solar flares. A Tokyo salaryman swung a briefcase that turned into a railgun mid-swing. A grandmother from Lagos beat an immortal machine to death with her purse because it looked at her grandson funny. Children threw snowballs that contained the heat death of stars. Every act of petty, glorious, impossible human defiance that had ever existed happened at once, braided together into a single wordless shout that roughly translated to, not fucking. Today, the gardener tried to prune. It unmade timelines, rewrote constants, turned gravity inside out. None of it stuck. You can't edit a story while the characters are holding the pen. Amira Khan, whole again and flying a fighter stitched together from every plane she'd ever lost, dove straight into the gardener's core, trailing contrails of rage and laughter. She broadcast on every frequency as she went supersonic through the fabric of reality itself. This is Razor Actual. All stations, all souls, give M hell. That S, an order from a girl who watched her planet die and still got up this morning. Make it hurt. And humanity, bless its reckless beautiful heart, obliged. They fought with guitars that shredded probability, with recipes that poisoned mathematics, with love letters that burned holes through causality. A kid from Glasgow headbutted a god because it dissed his mom. An entire battalion of accountants from Mumbai balanced the cosmic books and bankrupted entropy itself. The gardener began to fracture. Not from damage was a concept it had invented, but from comprehension. It saw for the first time in 10 million years what it had been afraid of. Humans didn't win by being stronger. They won by refusing to let the story end anywhere but on their terms. Caleb walked forward through the storm, Lily riding his shoulders, waving her triceratops like a battle standard. Every step rewrote a law of physics into something friendlier. Behind him came the dead and the living and everyone in between. An army of regular people who had decided the universe was big enough for mess and mercy both. The gardener gathered itself for one last pruning, one final silence to fall across everything that had ever dared to feel. Caleb stopped 10 meters away, or 10 light years distance, had stage fright now. You still don't get it, he said quietly. We're not your immune system. We're not your reckoning. We're just folks who looked at the dark and said, we can make this cozier. He reached out, not with power, but with the same hand that once held a soggy bowl of cereal while the world ended, and he offered it. The gardener hesitated. That was all it took. Because humanity doesn't conquer. Humanity invites. The gardener took the hand. Reality exhaled. The battlefield became a cookout. The gardener, suddenly small and uncertain and very, very old, found itself sitting on a lawn chair on a reborn earth, holding a beer that tasted like forgiveness and watching children chase fireflies that used to be battle fleets. Stars settled into gentle orbits. Physics relaxed its tie. Somewhere, Johnny Cash started playing on a jukebox made of reconciled opposites. Caleb sat on the porch steps of a house in Amarillo that had never existed until someone remembered it perfectly. Lily asleep against his chest. Amira beside him, feet propped on the railing, passing the bottle back and forth. We won, she said, like she was testing the words for cracks. Nah, Caleb answered, watching the Milky Way rearrange itself into a shape that looked suspiciously like a thumbs up. We just refused to lose so hard the universe filed for emotional damages. She laughed until she cried. Or maybe cried until she laughed. Same difference. Far above, the former gardener now going by something that translated roughly to Grandpa learned how to whittle and tell terrible dad jokes while galaxies bloomed around him like gardenias. The war was over. The growing had just begun. And somewhere, in a universe finally big enough for every contradiction humanity ever carried in its stubborn heart, a little girl woke up her daddy because the stars were singing too loud and she couldn't sleep. Caleb Brooks smiled, kissed the top of her head, and whispered the truest thing anyone ever said about being human. That's okay, baby. They're just learning the words. Then he carried her inside, past porch lights that never went out, into a tomorrow that belonged to dreamers, fighters, fuck-ups lovers, and every beautiful bastard who ever looked at the void and offered it a beer instead of a kneel. Humanity didn't just survive, it threw the biggest, rowdiest, most inconvenient party the cosmos had ever seen. And the music never stopped. Years after the music stopped and the stars learned how to hum in harmony, travelers still found the little blue house on the edge of a quiet Amarillo neighborhood that had no business existing anymore. The porch light was always on, the screen door creaked the same 3 notes, and if you knocked after sunset, a tall man in faded jeans and a ranger's cap would answer, holding a little girl's hand and a cold Shiner Bock. He never asked who you were or how you found the place. He just handed you a beer, pointed at the lawn chairs and said, "Sky's pretty tonight. Pull up a seat." That was Caleb Brooke, the man who ate the void, the devourer, the guy who told the architects of reality to go fuck themselves with kindness. Except now he mowed his lawn on Saturdays, coached pee-wee football, and burned barbecue like it was a war crime. Lily, 12 now, freckles still winning the war against Dunsgren, rode her bike to a school that taught calculus in Swahili and zero-point engineering in Texas drawl. She had friends who were plasma clouds, friends who were former accordance evaluators trying to figure out emotions, and one best friend who was literally a reincarnated woolly mammoth because why the hell not? Amira Khan lived 3 streets over in a hangar house full of half-restored fighters and adopted kids who called her Coach Razor. She still had both arms. Perks of rewriting physics with spite, but she kept a jagged scar on her left shoulder as a reminder that miracles usually come with receipts. On Fridays, she flew loops around the moon just to watch Earth turn and remember the day it came back bluer and angrier than ever. The galaxy had changed its name, unofficially, to the Rowdy Garden. Planets grew whatever their people damn well pleased. Cities of living coral, oceans of liquid music, forests where the trees argued philosophy in 17 dead human languages. Former accordance worlds were learning how to throw parties that lasted decades and how to apologize for 10 million years of genocide. It turns out when you give immortal machines the capacity for shame and really good whiskey, they cry a lot and build ridiculously elaborate sorry monuments. One of them carved an entire mountain range into Caleb's face. He pretended to hate it. Lily thought it was hilarious. Earth itself became the hearth, not a capital humanity had outgrown capitals. Just the place you went when you needed to remember what dirt smelled like after rain. What a screen door sounded like slamming behind barefoot kids. What it felt like to argue with your neighbor about fence lines while secretly leaving tomatoes on their porch. Pilgrims came from 1,000 light years away, tentacled poets, crystalline historians, energy beings who never had bodies until they saw pictures of county fairs and decided they wanted cotton candy and heartbreak too. They all left quieter, carrying something small and stubborn in their chests that hadn't been there before. Caleb never ruled anything. Never wanted to. When pressed, he'd shrugged and say, "I just held the door open. Y'all walked through and redecorated." The gardener, Grandpa now, gray beard and suspenders because cliches are comfort food, spent most afternoons on that same porch teaching Caleb how to whittle ducks, while Lily corrected their astrophysics homework with the casual cruelty of a preteen who'd once been a cosmic horror. One night, 20 years after the roar, a young traveler, some kind of bioluminescent journalist from a water world, asked the question everyone still whispered, "What actually happened? How did you win?" Caleb leaned back, boots on the railing, and stared at the Milky Way doing lazy barrel rolls overhead like it was showing off. "We didn't win," he said. "Winning implies somebody lost. We just remembered we were allowed to be messy, broken, loud, kind, furious, forgiving, ridiculous people who love bad jokes and good dogs and sunsets that don't need a reason." The universe had spent 10 million years trying to iron that out of everything that breathes. We looked at the iron and said, "Cute, watch this." Then we turned the whole damn cosmos into a backyard barbecue where nobody gets eaten unless they re-ribs. Lily, eavesdropping from the swing, yelled, and nobody gets left out. Even the jerks get second helpings if they say sorry, right? Amira, walking up the driveway with a casserole nobody asked for, snorted. Kid's not wrong. Human evolution wasn't bigger guns or longer lives. It was deciding the table's always big enough if we drag up more chairs. The journalist's glow flickered with something that might have been tears. So what happens now? Caleb handed her a fresh beer, clinked the bottle against whatever she used for hands. Now we keep doing the stupid, beautiful thing we've always done. We grow. We screw up. We fall in love with sunsets and strangers and ideas that scare us. We tell stories around campfires that happen to be neutron stars. We make sure no kid carbon, silicon, plasma, or otherwise ever has to watch their sky go dark again. He looked out at the quiet street where a former evaluator was teaching a human toddler how to ride a bike made of forgiveness, where the air smelled like mesquite and possibility, where the stars themselves leaned in to listen. We turned the void into a front porch, he said softly. Everything else is just details. Years later, when Caleb finally got old the way stubborn men do, gray at the temples, laugh lines deep enough to hide regrets in, he sat on that same porch with Lily grown tall and fierce beside him. Amira on his other side, Grandpa whittling another duck that looked suspiciously like Vextrol. The galaxy was loud with weddings and arguments and music and the sound of people figuring out how to be better tomorrow than they were today. He took one last look at the sky he'd once watched die, raised his bottle, and toasted the dark that had learned to fear the light inside ordinary hearts. To the ones who didn't make it, he said, voice rough with love and time, we brought your chairs anyway. Then Caleb Rook, the man who taught the universe how to dream, closed his eyes and went to sleep on a porch that would stay lit forever. Because humanity didn't just survive the alien resistance, we threw open every door, dragged the cosmos inside, handed it a plate, and said, families, family, eat before it gets cold, and somewhere out there, in every messy, magnificent corner of a rowdy garden that never shuts up and never gives up, the story keeps growing, because that's what humans do. We don't end, we echo. Did this story hit you as hard as it hit us? What would you do in humanity's final hour? Drop your ideas for the next HFY story below.